Hey guys, Second Lieutenant Brockberry here. In today's video, I'm going to describe and introduce how to actually apply to become a cyber officer. Now this video is a little bit more specialized and it caters more towards OCS students, but I think the process is going to be very similar for ROTC. This is also going to be more for the active duty component people. If you're reserves or National Guard, I believe the process is the same as other branches where you have to actually directly apply to a cyber unit near you. And if you're accepted, then you just continue on to that pipeline. However, for the active duty components, especially for the OCS or officer candidates, the process is a little bit different. As I mentioned in my OCS video, officer candidates and people who go through OCS to commission, in order to get their branch, they actually have to fight or compete on an OML at OCS. As I mentioned before, the OML is basically a rank structure in which you get points depending on how you do in the history exam, the exams, op boards, your sticks lanes, physical fitness events like Bolton obstacle course, or the 4 mile or 5 mile now, depending on if they've changed it. And depending on how you do, you're ranked within the class. The top people get their top choices, while the bottom people might get their last preference. So, if you submit your preference list as engineering my top choice, signals my second choice, chemicals my third choice, and you're ranked 5 in the class, more than likely you're going to get engineering, which is your first choice. However, if you do poorly within the class, and you're ranked kind of low on the OML, and let's say infantry is your number one, you might get stuck with something you don't want that's lower on your preference list, like quartermaster. However, as a cyber officer or applying to cyber, you kind of operate outside of the OML. And this is the same with aviation. So it's pretty similar, where with aviation cyber, you actually directly apply directly to the cyber branch. And in this video, I'm actually going to go over how you do that. I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions that I often see on the Army OCS subreddit, things like that, just to kind of give everyone a how-to guide on how to actually get the process started. Now, while at OCS, you're probably going to find that your cadre or the other students probably don't know too much about the process or procedure or cyber branch in general. And that's because the cyber branch is so small. Just a little background, the cyber branch was created in 2014, so it's the newest branch, as I recall, if I recall correctly, of the Army. In your OCS class, there's probably only going to be 1 or 2 people that actually apply for cyber, or maybe even none. In my class, there was 2. In the previous Alpha company, I think there was 1. Before that, there was none. And they only give out a limited amount of slots each year. Overall, as of 2021, I haven't checked the posture numbers of 2022. I think there's only around 800 cyber officers in the whole Army. Now, if you get into like 17 Bravo, 17 Delta, which are also officers, cyber officers, but they have a different specialization other than your typical cyber warfare, it gets even smaller. I think for 17 Deltas, which is like the developer, more coding, developing software, things like that, there's less than like 30 officers in the whole Army. For 17 Bravos, it's maybe less than 200. I'm not completely sure. But as you start getting more specialized, it gets a little smaller and smaller. And I'll go over the distinctions between all 3 officer specializations within the cyber branch in the PowerPoint that I'm going to show you as well. So that's enough of the introduction. Let's hop into cyber branch, how to branch, the process, the packet, etc. Frequently asked questions. Okay, so here's the PowerPoint, and it's just going to be a brief introduction to cyber as a branch and kind of a guide on how to apply. So some frequently asked questions. The biggest one, I think, that at least that I see in like the Army OCS subreddit and kind of that you get in general, is do I have to have a computer science degree or STEM degree in general to apply to cyber? Do I have to have work experience, things like that? And the answer to that is no, you do not. And I'll get into this a little bit more in further slides, but the basic answer is no, you do not. It is not required, and in fact, an anecdote is during my cycle at OCS, we had someone with a computer science degree apply, who out of all the people who actually applied to cyber probably had the most experience, and he was actually rejected. Will having certifications improve my application? Of course. Any knowledge of the cyber field will increase your chances. But as I mentioned before, it's not the end-all be-all. They're just looking for people with the aptitude to learn the cyber material. And if you can demonstrate that you are willing to learn, that you're excited to learn, and that you have the aptitude, they'll probably accept you. What is a cyber pipeline? I'll go into that more in the future slides. I'm going to go over what are the differences between 17 Alpha, 17 Bravo, and 17 Delta. And then I'm going to go over what are the duty stations for cyber officers. So stay tuned to answer, for these questions being answered. So getting started, like I mentioned before, a STEM degree or comp sci degree is not needed and certifications are not needed. That being said, they obviously are going to help if you do have them. Like I mentioned before, you don't necessarily need them, and the people in my OCS class, out of the 2 people that got accepted, one of them was a non-STEM degree, had no experience with Python networking or anything, and he was still accepted. Myself, actually, so I guess I should give my background, is I have an electrical engineering bachelor and a Bachelor of Arts in Japanese language. Aside from that, I don't really have any cyber related experience. The electrical engineering does relate, adjacently to cyber, and more specifically, it relates almost directly to 17 Bravo specialization. But, in regards to the entry-level stuff and getting actually into cyber, I didn't necessarily have that much experience. So here's directly from the Army website, or the cyber website, and I'm going to actually give a link to this, and all this information is going to be found on this Army website, including the points of contact, some more in-depth slides, things like that. So check out the description, click on that link, and do some exploration for yourself. This video is just going to be meant as like a quick introduction and kind of a starting point for anyone who's having trouble actually getting their foot in the door. So minimum requirements: you have to be a U.S. citizen, you have to have a top secret clearance, so you have to pass a polygraph. Now this is unit dependent. If you're not doing a job within cyber that requires it, you probably won't have to take it. Usually I believe they are, I don't think they're lifestyle polygraphs. Lifestyle is usually conducted by like FBI, CIA, things like that, and they ask questions like, oh, have you ever smoked marijuana? Have you ever done drugs? Lifestyle questions. These polygraphs are more catered towards national security questions like, do you have any foreign contacts? Have you ever leaked information? Have you ever thought about, rebelling against the United States government? Things like that. Those are the type of questions that will be asked. And once again, those are only unit specific, or if your job requires a polygraph. Physical fitness demands, that's kind of a moot point because you have to pass these, the ACFT anyways. You have to have a bachelor's degree. Like I mentioned before, STEM degree is not needed, but it helps. Cyber branch assessment and selection process. I'll go into what this incurs in, I think, the next 2 slides or something like that. So recommended criteria, like I mentioned before, you want to be a strong academic performer. STEM degree helps. Cyber work experience helps. Certifications if you have general interest in cyber. So things like that. Certifications that might help you: Security Plus, Network Plus, and VHL Basic. I only put these 3 just because they're entry-level certifications. So if you still have time before you actually join the Army or before you actually go to OCS, you might want to consider, getting these certifications. They're not too difficult, and they're, like I mentioned, they're entry-level. And so if you're completely new to cyber, it will help you kind of get your foot in the door. If you have, other certifications like OSCP, CISSP, obviously those are going to work in your favor, but those aren't necessarily entry-level certifications, so I didn't put them down. So what you're going to want to, get familiar with if you're completely new or if you don't necessarily have a STEM background or things like that, you kind of want to get familiar with Python. You don't have to become a Python guru, but know how Python works, know the basic syntax, things like that. You're going to want to know basic networking, things like network devices, encapsulation, things like that. Basic electromagnetism, waves, how they interact, waveforms. You're going to want to know things about, Linux, operating system knowledge, command line. You want to, get the basic commands of that. And then PowerShell, Bash scripts. Those are also a very important thing you should kind of familiarize yourself with. So if you still have time before you actually join the Army, or if you still have time before you want to apply for cyber, I would recommend kind of getting some baseline knowledge in these topics in order to improve your chances. Because if you demonstrate during the interview that you're going to later have as part of the cyber commissioning process, then you already have a leg up than someone who doesn't have this knowledge. And it also demonstrates that, hey, I'm willing to learn and I want to learn and I want to become a cyber officer. So here's the basic how-to. So your first step out of everything is, first you gotta wait. I think you have to wait till OCS. You might not have to. You might be able to do it before you even go to basic. But my recommendation is just to wait until you at least graduate basic training. So once you get to OCS, you can start right away. You can even start if you're like a holdover for whatever reason. You can start during that time. But I would recommend waiting until after basic before you start applying. So anyways, once you're done with basic, you're at OCS, you're ready to go. You're going to reach out to the division chief and ask for a questionnaire and packet. So I'll give the point of contact in the division chief's email. It can be found in the link below. I didn't want to put it on the slideshow just because I don't know. I just don't think it's appropriate necessarily to put emails in a YouTube video, but I will give you the link so you can find it. If you scroll down to the bottom, it'll be there along with other points of contacts. In the link, you'll see a more in-depth slideshow about cyber. You can find cyber links, things like that. So this link is going to be your bread and butter for kind of introducing yourself to cyber, getting cyber knowledge, and it's where I'm drawing all this information from. So your next step is you're going to email the division chief. And just demonstrate or let him know that, hey, I'm interested in joining cyber. What are the steps? Can you send me the questionnaire packet, etc. So he's going to send you back an email with the questionnaire and the packet requirements, and then you're going to fill out that questionnaire. And the questionnaire is basically like a self-assessment. Why do you want to be a cyber officer? How do you think you compare to your other like people who are also competing? And then it's going to go into technical questions, things like networking questions, electromagnetic questions. You're going to fill that out, and I'll go over a little bit more specific in the next slide. And then you're going to complete the packet, and then you're going to send that back to him. Then he's going to give you a phone interview, or say, hey, next week at 1700, let's have a phone interview. You're going to get interviewed for 30 minutes, and then depending on how your phone interview goes, you're accepted. And that's all you have to do. It takes about 3 weeks to 6 weeks to get the whole process done. So I recommend starting early, just so you kind of finish and have your memo that says, hey, this OC has been accepted into the cyber branch as soon as possible. So the questionnaire itself is pretty simple if you are familiar with the topic. If you're not, it might take some researching, some exposure to before you are comfortable with answering the questions. But I'm not going to get into specifics because that's on you to kind of familiarize yourself with, and I'm also pretty sure I'm not even supposed to give specifics, but basically, or share the specifics. Basically, here are some things that were on the questionnaire, or the topics that you might want to learn in order to tackle the questionnaire technical portion. So things like network devices, switches, hubs, bridges, routers, networking basic, like I mentioned before, encapsulation, things like that. You might want to learn how to bash script, just get kind of familiar with bash or PowerShell. Operating systems, you were going to want to know, basic Linux commands, how to function, the functionality of Linux, just things like that. Circuit analysis, parallel versus series, how voltage, resistance, and current, interact with each other, like Ohm's law, things like that. Electromagnetic topics, maybe like waves, how they interact, just basic electromagnetic things. Logic gates, and or, nors, nands, just basic logic gates, and then Python. Just understand basic Python commands, the syntax, things like that. And that's basically all covered in the technical portion of the questionnaire. Now, your general cyber packet is going to have, I think I had 3 letters of recommendations. I had my transcripts, I had an essay, I had my resume, and then I also included some of my projects from my time as an undergraduate. I think they allowed us to use letter of recommendations in the essay that we use for our OCS packet. So I would recommend just saving those and making sure you have those on standby. Resume, just update it. And then if you have any projects from, if you were an electrical engineer or engineering in general, you might have a capstone. Those are good projects to, include to kind of demonstrate like, hey, I have experience in this. If you don't have any projects, don't worry. Like I said, the other person in my cycle who was accepted had no experience and he was still accepted. So, it's not the end all be all. So before I get into the pipeline, I'm just going to reiterate, just so you know. Okay, so you get to OCS, you email division chief, ask for a questionnaire and the packet requirements. He's going to send those over to you. You start, building up your packet. Things like letter of recommendations, transcripts, essays, projects, whatever. You're going to fill out the questionnaire, which I mentioned before has all these topics. You're going to complete the packet. You're going to email it back. I zipped it in I put it in a zip file just so it was condensed all in one, made it easier for him. He's going to give you a time for a phone interview. You're going to get interviewed, and then he's going to send you maybe a week and a half later, hey, you've been accepted, or hey, you've been denied. The phone interview is pretty simple. They just ask questions like, hey, why do you want to be a cyber officer? Do you have any experience with cyber topics? Has there been a time where you've disagreed with a leader or a leader's decision, and how did you react to that? Where do your morals derive from? Things like that. It's not a technical interview. At least mine wasn't, and as far as I recall, none of the officer candidates interviews were ever technical. So it's pretty simple. Just be honest, demonstrate that you're a good dude or female, good dude or gal. And it's pretty simple. It's not too overwhelming, and if you really want it, just demonstrate it, and I'm sure you'll get it. So now I'm going to go into the pipeline of, basic, just a 17 alpha. So actually, before I begin, there's 3 kind of routes you can go as a cyber officer. The most basic one is just like a cyber warfare officer, and this is going to be your kind of what you imagine. Your offensive, you're working in the offensive space, defensive space, you're working on ISO, things like that. And that's every officer goes through this pipeline to begin. If you want to continue on specializations, you just take on more specialized courses after. But every officer is a 17 alpha to begin. And so once you complete OCS, you're then going to Cybolic, which is about 9 months, 1 week. So it's about 37 weeks. And it's split up into, I think 9 modules. So module A, which is around 10 weeks, is your Common Core. This is where you do your land nav, your marksman, qualification, EO, sharp, resilience training, everything that makes the Army, you're going to learn about. And you can see in this PowerPoint picture, which also I should mention I did take from the website. So once again, check out the website that I link in the description for more in-depth, and so you can look on your own. You're going to learn about Cisco, like CCNA, you might even be able to get, which is a certification, but you're going to learn about Cisco. Then you're going to go into CISSP, you're going to learn programming, you're going to go into operating systems, then you're going to go into like cyberspace operations, things like that. So this is about a 9-month course, and then if you're just a pure 17 Alpha, after you're done with bulk, you'll get assigned to a 17 Alpha or cyber unit, and then that's it. Here's a little bit further down the line, but this will kind of give you an idea of how you proceed after as a cyber officer, you know, in regards to getting promoted to captain, major, things like that. So once again, this was taken off the the link, Army link below, so make sure to check that out. Now 17 Bravo are electromagnetic warfare officers. This is what I am. So you first go to Cyberbullock, and then after Cyberbullock, you attend another 3-month qualification course, and it's more catered towards electromagnetic, you know, area. So as you can see, you know, you get, it's, I think another 10, it's 10 modules, and it's all about, you know, EMS, just basically you're learning about electromagnetic warfare. Next is same thing, pipeline, pretty similar to 17 Alphas. And then the final one, this is the one I know least amount. As a 17 Delta, you actually don't go to the 17 Alpha bullock. 17 Deltas have their own bullock, which is 10 months. So you don't have to go to the 9-month one first, I believe. You just go straight to the 10-month one, and it's separated into, you know, 6 modules. And the 17 Deltas are the people who are, you know, developing systems. They're the software developers. They're kind of the, I guess, coders, programmers of the cyber division or cyber branch. Next, we're going to go into the duty stations. Once again, this was pulled directly from the Army website, but essentially your main 3 duty stations for 17 Alpha are going to be Fort Meade, Fort Gordon, and I believe Hawaii is a pretty big one. But those 3, and maybe even Belvoir in Virginia, so those 4 are kind of the main ones that you're going to see people go to, but especially Fort Gordon and Fort Meade. Those are the 2 main duty stations that you're going to find yourself in as a 17 Alpha. And those are kind of where most of the operations are conducted from. So if you want to get the most experience in kind of cyber operations, those are probably the spots you want to go. Other places that you see here, you might have adjacent jobs in regards to what you're actually doing to your day-to-day. But if you really want the, you know, cyber experience, I would recommend trying to get to Fort Meade, Fort Gordon. So that's basically it for that. So as I mentioned before, applying to cyber is actually not that confusing. It's pretty straightforward. You just reach out to the division chief and, you know, start from there. I'm hoping this video made Cyber Branch a little less muddy and a little bit more clear for anyone who's interested. Cyber Branch has been a great experience so far. Granted, I'm still very early in the stages, so I'm still a new cyber guy, but overall it's been, you know, it's been electric. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested, to kind of dive into the resources that I'm going to post below and kind of just explore it for yourself. You know, decide whether or not cyber is going to be a branch that you want to, you know, join. It's a huge time commitment. You know, it's 9 months of 17 Alpha Bullock, and then if you want to specialize, it's another like 3 months for 17 Bravo Bullock. So it's definitely worth considering. One of the coolest things in my opinion is how small the cyber branch is. So you're really part of a close-knit community, and it's such a new branch within the Army that you're on you're a pioneer kind of, in a sense. It's maybe not as cool as that, but for me, I feel like a pioneer on a new frontier. Like, cyber is gonna be, in my opinion, one of the most prevalent frontiers of warfare in the near future, and it's an honor, and I'm proud to actually be on the front lines of that frontier. So definitely consider cyber. If you have any questions, just comment, and I'll reach out to you. And if you really have any more questions, you can just ask for my Instagram or my Reddit, email, whatever, and I'll be happy to answer questions. So that's basically it. I hope this video helped clear things up. Once again, this is Second Lieutenant Brock Pereira. Thanks for watching.